for coming. Oh, yep, hold on, never mind. Hey, everybody, thanks so much for coming. My name is Christopher Nosko. I'm one of the co-founders of PRAGUE UX Writers, the other co-founder, of course, being Adriana over here. That's her, yes. So today we're going to be having a talk from Vladana. She's the CEO of Pretty Digital Nomads. She's actually been writing for 7 years for all kinds of tech companies, startups, and software houses. She's the proud owner of both a motorcycle and a cat. She's the perfect speaker for these events too, because she was actually the first internationally certified UX writer in the Czech Republic. So without any more introduction, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you for your kind words to start with. Before we start, just let's go over here. Yes. So today I'm going to speak about the ultimate workflow, UX designers and UX writers. And let me start with a question. How many of you are UX designers? Okay, about half of you. How many of you are UX writers? 3, 4. All right. How many are none of the above? Okay. What other roles? PMs? Project managers? Researcher. Nice. Developers, I see. Okay.
I support it.
Okay, so a few words about us. I'm the proud founder of Pretty Much Nomads as well. We are a content marketing agency. We do all the texts for tech companies. That means copywriting, that means marketing texts, and also UX writing, that means text for software. It's very important for us to have like all the processes in place because we are a full remote company. So that's like crucial for us to work. So how many of you don't know who a UX writer is? How much should I explain it? Okay, all of you know? Nice. Perfect. So I will skip a few slides. So as you all know, the copywriting should be clear, concise, and useful. And today we will speak about the UX writer's place, because it's usually at the back of the line, correct? There are actually 3 approaches to the process I would like to mention today. And the first one I would like to call, let's think about it together. This is a design thinking process. It's actually just a chart to show that as we go through this process, the UX writer is present at every stage of the product development. That means since the very first idea about the first understanding the user, understanding the problem, going through all the user research, going through the ideation process, through prototyping, through testing, up to the implementation, and then all over again. Can you hear me correctly?
Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. So this is like a very nice thing to do. It's like the ideal version of it. It never looks like this. Then there is a second approach, which I would like to call, it's done, just add some text. That's the most common thing that happens to me, and I think I'm not the only one. That's just like you receive a Figma or Sketch, or even better, just a login information to the product, and you are instructed to just put in some words because it's okay, it's final. They are just like lorem ipsum left, but that's okay, and you just like replace it with something. And then there is a third option, and this is how we do it and how we recommend doing it. And this is how it can work according to us. As you can see, the 2 colors of those text boxes, the green ones and gray ones. We think that the gray ones are an absolute essential minimum that a UX writer should do. So we do the gray ones when the budget is tight, when the client is hesitant, when you don't have really much to work with. But we recommend doing the whole process. I will now just mention each of the steps, and then I will dive into detail in each of them. So the first one is UX research. We have some researchers here. So UX writer at this stage should understand the user, should learn the expressions the user uses, should learn the emotions the user goes through, and dive into the issue as such. The second stage is ideation. That means that the UX writer should map the user journey together with UX designer, should set the voice and tone and terminology for the product and create a product persona. Then we are going to the essential bits. Those are wireframes. The first one is low fidelity wireframes. Now we have the basic outlines of how the product will look like. And the UX writer should name all the features, name all the tags, sections, headlines, should form the narrative and point out benefits and information architecture. Once we have this done, we are going to high fidelity wireframes. That means that you already have something in Figma, Sketch, or any other program that you can finally see the final product, how it really will look like in the future. And now the UX writer should write the final copy, add the support, prevent the user mistakes, and edit it directly in Figma or Sketch. Then there is usability testing. Now the UX writer needs to listen to the actual users using the product, using the prototype, and react to it by tweaking texts, listening to terminology, and edit user flows if necessary. If I'm talking too fast, just like wave. Okay, perfect. Then there is the development phase. That means the copywriter now needs to, if they didn't do it before, now they need to write error messages, should edit string metrics, add localization, and creating all needed variations of all the screens. And then it never ends. There is further improvement needed. So now the copywriter, not UX writer, sorry, UX writer should implement user reviews and customer support feedbacks, should react to analytics, should react to new features. Now, it's a really nice theory. Now let's see how it could work like hands-on some product. We will take a closer look at our own web application because I cannot really use some customer application, as you can understand. We are all under NDAs. This is our own web application, Contest Hour. You can see the web at contesthour.com. This application is for content marketers and copywriters, and it's basically a digital content and publication plan. So the team was a bit mixed, as I am a UX writer and I'm also a product owner, but my role of the UX writer was taken by my colleague. So now I can say how it actually worked working on that. As you can see, I will have all those slides, like detailed ones, divided into two parts. There is one part always reserved for UX writer's job and one part for the other role. Some teams are smaller, so they only have UX designer conducting all the research and conducting all the things connected with UX. Other teams have the researcher. Other teams just like do it all together. So the other part of the screen is always reserved for the second person the UX writer needs to work with in that step. So at this point of UX research, the UX designer or UX researcher talks with users, defines the pain points, understands the user mindset, maps the current situation behavior, and makes the draft of user journey. Now, what does UX writer do? They need to understand how users talk. They need to listen to them. They need to listen to the words they use, the words they say, and what emotions do they feel when they talk about the issue. So here, always highlighted with bold, is the output of that stage that the UX writer should end with. So at this point, at the end of UX research, the UX writer needs to define how the product has to communicate with the user to understand each other. And now, beautiful example. It really looks like a bit of a mess, but it is perfectly organized. So here is our research phase, a bit mapped. We mapped all the words the users used. We mapped all the functions the users mentioned, and we discussed it all with UX writer who wasn't present at the research. So we shared the information. We had all like those talks recorded, and he didn't need to be present, but we handed him it all over. So that could work like that. The second phase is ideation. Now the UX designer creates user journey, drafts the task flows, and basically just transforms the user insight into the product solution. Now, what's up to the UX writer? UX writer needs to know how the language should look like. What activity the user hates? That's very important, because sometimes you don't realize that user hates some part of the product you are creating, and you need to get the user through that part as fast and as smoothly as possible, because otherwise the whole product could be like the coolest thing ever, but that one little point just triggers. And you also need to know what rewards the user. You need to be a bit like, not too generous with your praises during the product, not to say, oh yeah, good work, like with every action the user does, but you need to know when it is needed. So like basically when I concluded, the UX writer at the end of ideation needs to understand how to change the tone during the product tour to correspond to the user's emotional state. When the user is frustrated, don't kick him. So this is one of the early prototypes we made for the product. First, it was supposed to be called Pretty Much Content, as you can see. And for example, we realized that we cannot use the name STDC because half of the users didn't know what the hell we were talking about. So we had to use the phrase sales funnels. And that is more understandable at the users, like all of them knew what we meant. We also had to put the pain points down a bit. So we knew that they had like really bad time filtering through the content they created and so on. And those were the pain points we had to put down. Okay, low fidelity wireframes. Now you know what the user needs. Now you have like kind of an idea about the product, what it should look like, what it should do. And UX designers creates interactions, designs individual components, and creates user flows and task flows. And if they are good enough, and if they are thinking in front of the work, they are also designing and onboarding at this stage. UX writer, however, needs to decide how to call the features, how to name all the tags, how to name all the headlines, sections, how to define the project narrative, how it actually like puts all the places together, and how to design an information architecture. It's very important to not overflow the user with all the information at one point. You need to just part it up a bit and just serve it to them piece by piece as they go through. At the end of the low fidelity wireframes, when this is done, UX writer needs to work with UX designer as tight as possible at this stage. And they need to communicate and explain the choice of terminology, tone, and voice to the whole design team. Because if they don't do this, then the design team doesn't understand why they are using one word and not the other, why it needs to be consistent, why are we now talking a bit more serious than we were in the whole rest of the product, and now they understand how we are thinking about it. We skipped this phase a bit during our product. We didn't create low fidelity wireframes. We created like this kind of flow where we named all the functions, where we named all the points where the user interacts with the app, and we came with all the terminology in this one. Okay, now we are going to high fidelity wireframes. When I was talking about the UX writer working really tightly with the UX designer in the previous step, now it's even more important. UX designer now creates detailed interaction design, crafts a design for all the tasks, and implements the final text into the design. UX writer's responsibility is to tweak the final copy, is to harmonize the visual with the text. And it's really important, I cannot stress it enough, to work with UX designer and just to explain what you need to each other. When UX designer needs something to be really short and UX writer needs it to be really long because they couldn't put it in 5 words, They really need to like see each other's point and to come to a conclusion that works for both, but mainly it should work for the user. Now the UX writer also has time to think about how to prevent user mistakes. UX writer needs to participate where the product could be a bit confusing, where it could be a bit annoying to go through, and to prevent it as much as possible. Also to eliminate confusing moments. And at the end, as the UX writer is kind of responsible for the whole written content of the product, they should also add links to support or documentation when necessary. So at the end of this step, the UX writer needs to do their best to prevent user doubts or mistakes. This is our piece cut off from Figma. So we were discussing it like a lot. I hidden all the commentaries because you wouldn't see anything. Yeah, this is like the whole point. You need to discuss a lot. You need to see how it looks like. You need to prevent all the things that could happen. Now we have like this beautiful piece of craft you two created. You are very proud on your work. It's your little baby. And now the reality comes crashed down with usability testing. So now the product actually gets to be seen by the user. Now there is again UX designer or researcher. They are going through the user scenarios. They are validating the hypothesis you had. And they are recording, writing down, or making notes of any mistakes and doubts the user feels and presents during the interaction with the product. And at the end, they should edit the design based on findings. I know it's beautiful and it's perfect, and it just doesn't make sense, but it does. The UX writer has very similar task to do. The UX writer really needs to listen to the users again. They need to validate the terms and terminology and all those stuff, that it really works, that the user really talks this way. They also need to validate the emotions they participate, they predict it. And also they really need to like put a closed eye, like where and why are they confused. That means the user could be confused either by design or by the text or by both. And you really need to make sure that your part is done well and your colleague's part is done as well. So at the end of usability testing, the UX writer needs to finalize the copy, terminology, or flow based on the testing results. It's very frustrating when you come to the point where you realize that one of your flows was like completely wrong, but you really need to rewrite it. When we were talking about the users, they've shown us also how they worked till now. So they presented that with Excel sheets and all those kinds of stuff. And we were once more validating if we are using the right terminology, if they are talking about it. We were also like checking if we are showing the right stuff when they need to be shown and where they need to know and see it. And now we are coming to the development phase. Of course, you can like reuse the usability testing like 1 or 2 times to make sure that everything is taken care of. But let's jump into development right away. Now I put a developer over there, but the UX designer is still part of the process. It's just that the UX writer now works with the developer more. So the developer now has the task to build UI according to design, create all the possible variations, because sometimes some design screens are missing, it could happen. So they also could request additional design or copy. UX writer now needs to hand the UI copy to the developer. They really need to, if they didn't do it so far, they need to create the error and system messages that the developer presents them with. And if they also translate, they need to do the localization into a different language. At the end of development, the UX writer needs to ensure that all copy visible in UI adheres to the style, tone, and terminology. It doesn't matter that it's an email to be sent. It doesn't matter that it's a welcoming screen. It doesn't matter where it is. It all needs to fit. Yeah, this is part of our strength matrix. It has like 800 rows and about 6 columns. This is just a bit part, just to show you how it looks like. It's very fun to look for a big of mistake in there. Okay, so now we go to further improvement. because as I said, it never ends. Now the product is out, the users are actually using it, and the UX designer as well as UX writer needs to listen to public and feedback. They need to react to customer support requests because customer support knows better. And they need to create new screens and features when necessary and edit anything based on analysis and metrics. Oh, metrics, yeah. Now the UX writer needs to see how the public reacts to copy. They need to see how smoothly does the user interact with the product. So it's great to just put some measuring metrics in there just to see where the users drop out or where they have some troubles. And how the users evaluate the product content. If you can see like in the app store that all the users complain about something, they have no idea what we are talking about, then you need to fix it. And also you need to actively ask, if you are not handed it over, what issues and questions does the customer support department handle? Because you can prevent it a lot by just adding some tooltip or some link to the product. Basically, UX writer needs to react to feedback and nail down the text in all product communication. If there is also a copywriter or some marketing department in the team, they need to work together to create the correct emailing, messaging, PPC campaigns, and all the stuff. Just like they need to, the copywriter needs to know the terminology the UX writer uses and needs to know the background for all of this. Yes, as you receive the feedback, it cannot get lost. So just save it somewhere in a Jira or anywhere, just to like name it, put it into to-do and like work on it. You cannot just like lose important stuff you get as a feedback. Feedback is one of the most valuable things you can work with. Okay, and now a few examples from the other side, not our product, but other products. And we will take a look at some user mistake prevention, terminology decision, voice and tone executions, design over text, eliminating user doubts. Okay. So here you see a shopping bag, or like a checkout in the eShop. And here is the phone number. And you are asking the user to put a phone number down. And as you can see, there is a little tooltip. Why is this required? And there is an explanation in case we need to call you about your order. There are three ways on how this could have ended up there. The first one is that the UX writer was clever enough and said, all right, we are asking the user to put the phone down, but some people could have issues with that. So just to prevent any mistakes, I will just put this down so they know that we are going to call them because of the mistakes. We are not going to sell their number to some company to just call them over. The second way could be that this wasn't there, and they conducted a user research, and the user said, oh, wait, oh, why are you asking my phone number? Like, I'm going to call me or like what? So that's the second way. And the third way is, this wasn't there. And the customer feedback got like 10 angry calls a day from people asking like, why the hell can I not finish my shopping without putting my phone down? Here is just an example of how you can have really little text saying everything, because it could seem a bit over texty, but if I was a user, I know like all the information just looking here. I don't need to click through. I know that there is free cancellation, no prepayment needed. All right, limiting time deal, that's good, that's going to sell. I can see that it's very good reviews. I can see availability. This is a very important button. If I would have here like book now, it could have dropped my engagement because it would be too, the user would make too much an obligation to click it.
That's quite crowded, right? At the first look, like even if I was the user, it would take me some time to find what I'm looking for because I would have to scan everything everywhere, all the stuff. So. Yeah,
but it's kind of a clever design. You can see like that the text leads you the eyes. But yeah, I agree with you. There is like a lot of text, but you can see like a bit of hierarchy in the text. Now you can see some examples of the product personas, of the style and tone it uses. So for example, if you know Spotify, and they have like those pre-made lists of songs, and there is like a category called something like work or focus or something like that. And when you click on it, the first thing you see is you can do it. That's nice. Also, if you read on Medium and you aren't a subscriber, they are not saying like, okay, your number of free articles this month has reached to an end. They are saying you read a lot. Are you going to buy something? Now, it's very important that the UX writer and the UX designer work together because there are some screens that are perfectly fine without any text. And the less text is in the product, usually the better. But there are some screens which you cannot do without. Okay, there are some other examples. Just going to click through that. Okay, so if I should end with some other tips and recommendations, it isn't so difficult to work together. And based on my experience and of the things I've seen, I think there are just like 5 simple steps to follow. The first one is to realize that nobody steals anyone's job. It's completely different role. It benefits the user, and you just need to rely on the process. The second thing is support your claim with data. Like saying, okay, blue isn't my color, or saying something like, I wouldn't say it this way, doesn't really mean anything. You always need data to prove your point if you are going to argue. It really connects with the third bullet point, that's provide constructive criticism. If you don't like anything, again, support it with data, say like something the other person can work with. Then respect the expert's decision. It's usually that when there is like a UX designer alone, long time on the work, and then a UX writer is invited to the project, the UX designer has a bit of tendency to just like say, okay, but like, hey, I've done it like so many years. I didn't need any UX writer. I know best. Well, just try to like a bit rely on each other and just to respect that the designer has the final say in design. The writer has the final say in writing, but altogether we are just working for the user to make it work. And if you aren't sure, just perform user testing. It's like that simple. And it doesn't cost that much. And those are some sentences that motivate to murder. There are like dozens of them, but I've picked like the 3 that trigger me the most. The first one is, write something down there. There is a space for it in the design. The second one is, you need to shorten those 5 words to 2 so I can fit it in. And the third one is, this isn't grammatically correct. Every sentence has to end with a dot. So just remember those and just say a bit nope in your head. Many more companies are now looking for UX writers, employing UX writers. I think that it's becoming the next trend in UX design and UX practice all together. So we just like need to learn how to work together and just do the best to work together. I said it twice, but it's very important. And the more eyes, the better. The user will benefit and all the kittens in the world will be happy. Okay, so any questions?
I made a mistake. I should have put the Slido up. Everybody clap. Thank you very much.
So I made a huge mistake. You saw me.
We have a Slido, but if we have especially brave people, they can ask questions too. So since it was my mistake and I forgot to put the Slido up there, I'll give people time to scan it and come up with a question. It's really great that we have the processes and we want to do like the certain steps at certain times. What would your advice be to someone who is in a company where maybe the teams aren't as receptive to that, or they just don't really want to get into like the different steps of the process and you are kind of stuck at the end? What would you tell those people to do to try to like solidify their position earlier in the process?
Well, when I encountered this, it was always resolved by simple user testing. I know that it's like answer to anything, But if you are saying, okay, we don't need to do this first and then first and then, if you are not going through all the steps and you have just like the final product, it usually just like hits the wall with the user, because suddenly the user like gets lost, doesn't know what's happening. If you are advocating for the process as such, I think there are like a lot of experts and literature you can solidify your facts with. But I think that especially the product owners and the CEOs of the company, they just listen to the users and just to see that it's not selling and that the user don't get it. And that's the best answer you can give them. If I answered.
No, that's good. Does anyone else have any other questions? It's a hand.
I would have one.
Okay.
Thank you. Hi, thank you very much for the talk. It was really interesting. And actually, as a UX designer, I would be curious about so to expand the UX writing skills, or to like really get the specialization in this direction. What would you recommend is the best direction, or maybe even some current like a learning company on the market, or like what is the best way to like deepen these kind of skills, maybe even for the designers? So if you can tell me more about that. Thank you.
Yeah, sure. It depends on the budget. But
and based on the quality, let's say.
Yeah, well, when I started first by like very small budget. So I've just read all the articles on Medium I could find. I've learned all the like UX Booth and all those other resources that are online. Then the great books which you can buy, like Microcopy and stuff like that.
Okay.
And also then when I had a bit of more money, I bought the course from UX Collectives.
That's what I wanted to ask, because I know about them especially, but didn't know like if maybe it's a good choice or it can be a scam.
I learned a lot from that, and it was really hands-on. So it was great to like receive feedback and to do the thing, and it also was more focused on the UX in the UX writing as well. So it wasn't just like, okay, all the copywriters can write.
Sounds good. Okay, so you would recommend this course, for example?
I took it and it was good. Cool. But I also read the book. It was great. Yeah, and we may also do some course later this year, but we will see how it goes. Nice. I've already had some people asking me for that, so maybe I will come up with something.
Thank you. And if you would have some specific recommendations for books, I would be happy to hear that later.
If you write me somewhere, I have some.
Sure, I can do that later.
Yeah, perfect. Then I could write you like some books I recommend to people. I have like the list.
Thank you very much.
Okay, perfect.
Cool. Anybody else have any questions they would love to ask? Or
yeah,
that's you.
Sorry, I was. Yeah.
Okay, I guess we can go. Oh, you got one
question. I don't need that.
Well, for the viewers online, we got online people.
So what's I want to ask, what argument would you use when you get to your boss if you don't have a UX writer on the team? What could I say so I can make them believe that we need one? Actually,
there are some pretty good case studies made by Google. They presented it at Google I/O 2014, I believe, and they are showcasing how a single one-line button increased their engagement by 17%. And those are information you can just Google, you can look for online. And that's pretty, like usually CEOs and bosses here on budget and here on money made. So this is usually the facts you want to confront them with. Perfect.
Anybody else? Any other questions before we go to Slido? Alrighty. Okay, one of the questions is, what can I do if my UX writer isn't available to work very tightly with me because they have lots of teams to work with?
Sure.
A lot of UX writers struggle with.
It's a tough one. Oh, if I would say that you need a UX writer who is very focused on your job, and that means you need to pay them well. If you have really tight budget, then unfortunately the UX writer needs to work on simultaneously on many projects at once, and then it gets difficult. And so I would say just get more budget and get them more money to work with you tightly. But if they don't respond, like if they don't work with you, don't respond to emails, don't answer on Slack, then just fire them. I mean, like, you need to have the cooperation. If you are working with someone and they are, if you don't get like any feedback for some period of time, then the person doesn't work with you.
But maybe it could be the company issue, right? Because, for example, they didn't allow higher budget for more UX writers, so that doesn't have to be his fault, right?
Also very common, yeah.
Yeah. So first question, raise the budget. To have more time for you, no? Well.
All right, the next question is, do you also work on screen reader copy, like accessibility with your UX writers? If yes, what are your do's and don'ts?
Oh, well, we work a bit just like on the meta part of things, just like adding those hidden texts that could be read and trying to do as understandable language as we could and working on the contrast of things and stuff like that. But I couldn't say that I'm accessibility expert. But there are like great series made by, I believe, UX Collective as well. I received it in the mailbox, and it was like very good. They were going through all the things that you should, like a whole checklist you should actually go through, and that's a big help once you are dealing with this.
Yeah, I'm actually about to start is it pronounced like Udemy or something like that course? I've got a really good accessibility course for UX writers too.
It's a good one. Can you share it?
Yeah, I'll share that later. Yeah, sure, of course. I think it's something like 20 euros too or something like that. So it's pretty affordable.
Nice.
Okay, so that one's done. We've got, how do you convince the stakeholders or client of the UX writer's value? Lots of companies prefer hiring designers over writers in most cases.
If you have tight budget, you never hire a UX writer at this point. That's kind of the hard truth, but it's like that. Once you are hit with the user's reaction and realize we have usually companies, like our clients are usually companies that come to us with the problem, like with the whole solution made, with investors up there.
Really late in the process then.
Yeah. With investors just breathing at their necks. And they're like, okay, so the users are leaving the app, they don't get it, help us. And then we are just like going reverse and just trying to first go like with all the user testing, trying to figure out where the users drop out, what we should do. But yeah, that's our experience. That usually more expensive way at the end, but
yeah, I would say the issue here is as well that like companies usually don't understand that these things or these issues occurring are inner responsibility of a UX writer. Mm-hmm. I think it's everyone else's fault, and then, or like designer's fault in the first place. So I would say maybe it's a sign of a not mature design culture, or
yeah, we still need to learn who a UX writer is, and that it's needed as a role in the design team. And I think that because even now, getting even the product tested is a thing you need to fight for. Yeah. It's not something that the companies like do inherently.
Yes.
So I think that's even like the second step, because once you start testing, then you will see all those issues even in text. I know I talk about testing a lot, but it's like the key.
Yes, so I'm talking with a microphone. So.
Out of curiosity, though, you said a lot of the times, like some of the people coming in, why is this buzzing? Coming in are, they already have a problem and they're wanting, do I step further away? What do I do? They
it's
already
not
have
me
a
this
problem.
one.
Yeah. They already have a problem that you come in to fix.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's obviously better if the UX writer is involved in the beginning. How many of those people that you do get to come like fix the problem eventually do then come to you at the beginning of the process to actually see like the full circle, like how this is helpful?
Those companies have one thing in common. Those who come at the beginning of the process, it's usually a company driven by designers. Those companies usually understand the need for good text and for good writing as well, and they know it's not their strong suit, so they approach us first. And those companies who don't, it's usually just like really, it's product-focused thing owned by CEOs and run by investors, and it's like really not the designers making the call.
Good to know. Good to know. One of these, I think you already touched on. It said, would you consider teaching a class of UX writers in the Czech Republic? I think you touched on that already a little bit.
I consider it. I had few people asking for it. If I will get more, I will make it.
How do you actually sell UX writing? How do you explain to the decision makers that it's a crucial part of any app or product?
I don't. Usually, when people come to me, they either already know they need UX writing, so I don't need to explain it to them. And if they don't, they usually approach us with, okay, we need your technical writing skills. We need product documentation, we need user manuals, like all those things. And we say, all right, we are going to write it. And then we take a look at the products and we start like, okay, but you are using like 3 different terms for the same thing. And we should fix this. And then actually we are starting the conversation and we end up doing the UX writing at the end.
Okay. I'm not sure I understand this one. How should stakeholders value UX writing or writer? I'm not sure. Do you understand the question there? How should they value UX writing or UX writer?
They value it when they see the benefit, when they see the bottom line. If they see that they have issues in some point, or if they believe it could get them more money raised at the end, that's usually the argument they hear.
All right, and then last question. How do you find a good UX writer? There's so few of them.
That's true. In my team, I usually teach them myself because I hire either good copywriters, which are into UX, and then it's easier to teach them the ropes, to show them the ropes. And then there are testers. That's like a second good pool.
Like QA and stuff.
Like UX, like manual testers, let's say, who start writing technical documentation and they want to like move to another level and they like the writing. Then it's like the second pool. You can choose people who have talent to do that. And then there is the third pool, and that's technical writers, those people who write the documentation and stuff like that. So usually I just pick like from those pools and teach the people myself.
Right, well, that's all the questions. So if we'll give her another hand.
Oh.
Applause. I probably shouldn't use cultural specific phrases. That's on me.
Thank you.
All right, and then one other slide that I accidentally skipped. Reich is hiring. We've got senior UX writers we're looking for. We're looking for designers, product design managers, senior visual and motion designers. We've got a few more up there too that I couldn't fit on this slide. So if you go to careers.reich.com, you can look at all the roles. And I'm trying to remember if we had something at the end because, okay, nope. So that's it. Thank you everybody for coming. You can check out prettymuchnomads.com. And if you're interested in UX writing, doesn't matter if you're a designer, researcher, just curious, go to the Prague UX Writers Facebook group. Feel free to go grab some more pizza and a beer and just have a good time socializing and talking. Thank you very much for coming. I appreciate it.